I want to tell you a story, and it's recorded in the book called Acts. Now, Acts is a history book, and it recounts a number of events that took place when the days of the early church. It really is a history book all about the early church. In Acts 16, and it recounts the time, and it takes place about 15, maybe 20 years after Jesus' death and resurrection. And Paul and Silas, these two guys, are going on a missionary journey together, and they're going to share the good news of Jesus. And they go to this place called Philippi. Now, Philippi was an important city in the ancient world, and it was on the direct trade route between Rome and Constantinople, which is now modern-day Istanbul. Now, this is, in fact, the first place in Europe that the Christian message was taken. It was also where the first European convert to Christianity took place. And her name was Lydia. In fact, it's another first for women. There's loads of firsts for women in the scriptures. But, that's a message for another day. And it was also subsequently where the first church in Europe was ever located. Now, you may be watching this morning, you might not even believe in the Bible, you might not believe in the stories of the Bible. However, what we're looking at today took place in a real town, in a real place with real people. And you can still go and visit the same ruins of Philippi. It's in Macedonia, which is part of Greece. And it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, when Paul and Silas get to this town, they arrive there, and they're spending some time there. And then as they're going through the town, there's this girl, and it says that she's a slave girl. And it says that she has the spirit of divination, or the ability to predict futures, if you like. And she keeps sort of crying out. And every time they pass her by, every time she sees them, she shouts out that these men are servants of the Most High, and they are preaching about salvation. And it says Paul found it annoying. And after a few days of this, he commanded that the spirit come out of the girl. Now, this young girl gets delivered. But what that means now is her owners can no longer make money off of her. As you could imagine, they're furious. He's essentially just taken off their income stream. They're furious. And it says this in Acts 16, verse 19, it says this: when her owners saw that they were not going to make any more money off of her, they grabbed Paul and Silas, they dragged them into the marketplace before the rulers. They said to the magistrate, "These men are Jews, and they are disturbing our city. They are promoting customs that aren't lawful for us." The crowd joined in attacking them, and the magistrates tore their garments off and gave orders for Paul and Silas to be beaten with sticks. After they had inflicted many blows on them, they threw them into prison and ordered the jailer to keep them locked up. The jailer put them in the inner cell, and he locked their feet in stocks. This is not how they thought their trip to Philippi was going to turn out. They had hopes that their time in Philippi would actually turn out a bit differently. If you think about it, they were even doing the right thing. They put an end to someone being taken advantage of. They put an end to these owners touting out this girl, and making money off of her. Culturally at that time, you were allowed to keep slaves, and there was no problem with that culturally. But in God's culture, in the kingdom culture, she was not free. So they were doing the right thing. They get arrested. They get made into a public spectacle. They were racially profiled. These men are Jews. They get taken into the town square, and a mob beats them with sticks and rods, and then they get chucked into jail. They would be well within their rights to moan and complain about how unfair and unjust this whole situation is. In fact, they could even have a rant at God because he let them down. They were doing his business, and they were telling people about his son, Jesus, and look at where it got them. You know, I could imagine they could even sit there and Silas could be sitting there and Silas could have a go at Paul. Silas could be like, come on, man. You know, what the heck? You know, why'd you drag me along to this? Why are we doing this? This is not what I signed up for. They're in a different situation and a circumstance that they did not choose or want. And it was totally out of their control. You know, life threw them something unwanted, unexpected, unjust, and unfair. You might be watching this morning and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I have enough life experience behind me to know that this is going to happen in life. Maybe you've got enough common sense to just know life does this sometimes. See, you don't even have to be a follower of Jesus. This is universal. Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, you know this to be true in your heart. You know this to be true in your life. You've had enough friends whose lives have turned out very differently than they had originally hoped. You know, maybe it was a friend who was getting ready to go out for a meal and they're going out for that date and they're sitting there, and as they're sitting at that table having a conversation, as they begin to speak with one another, they begin to realize that the feelings aren't mutual. And what started out with high hopes and expectations and a glorious future actually ended and didn't go any further. Maybe it was the friend who had a car accident. Maybe it was the pregnancy that everyone had wanted and it only ended in a miscarriage. Or maybe it was the pregnancy that nobody wanted. Maybe it was the hope that this friendship would turn out to be something more. And yet you find out that they've been speaking behind your back or mistreating you. Maybe it was the job that you went for, only to not get it. Maybe it was the situation where you knew you were qualified for a role, but you were passed over for whatever reason. Maybe just because of who you are, maybe because you're a woman or the wrong skin color, and you feel like you just got misjudged entirely and just passed over, not even considered for something that you know you could have done very well. Maybe it's from being accused of something that you didn't do, or you were treated unfairly or unjustly. Maybe you were passed over from a promotion. Maybe your partner of many years, or maybe the parent of your children, announces one day that they found someone else and the relationship is over. You see, nobody gets into a relationship with the expectation that it's not going to work out. We all get into relationships, whether it's friendships or marriages, we all get into relationships with the hope that it works out. Maybe it's that morning when you found a lump. Or maybe it was that day when you received a letter from the doctor asking you to come and see them at your earliest convenience. Or maybe it's a pandemic that totally upended our lives, changed our shopping habits, changed our social habits, changed your income, changed your job, caused schools to be shut and families to go hungry. You see, this is when we can all feel and say that classic line, it's not fair. We say it with good reason because bad things happen to good people, and good people are mistreated or taken advantage of and accused of things they never did, and people get hurt and relationships break down, and it's not fair. Surely you've felt that before. Surely you've experienced that before. You're right. It's not fair. But how do we deal with it? You know, it doesn't matter if you're a follower of Jesus or not. We all have to face this in life. Some people think that because they've decided to follow Jesus, he's going to make sure that everything always works out. That when something like an illness or a job loss or a relationship breakdown or some other thing which is unexpected, unwanted, unjust, or unfair happens, then God gets the blame. I mean, why do bad things happen to good people? Why should we trust God anyway? What's the point of even following Jesus if this type of stuff is going to come our way in life? And here's why. See, following Jesus doesn't make your life perfect. Following Jesus gives your life perspective. Paul and Silas were treated unfairly, but somehow they were able to turn their hearts to God. They had enough life experience behind them to know that these things happen in life and that it wasn't God's fault. These were life things. They had enough experience to know that Jesus, who was the best person there ever was treated in the worst way possible. You see, this is only 15 to 20 years after Jesus had left this earth. They've got friends who were eyewitnesses, who had seen with their own eyes and heard with their own ears what Jesus was like. This isn't some theory from centuries ago. This is something that their friends have given their lives for. Their friends have seen, their friends have experienced, their friends had walked through. You know, they didn't have this outlook that if God was so loving and so perfect that he would never allow them to face any problems. These guys were alive when Jesus was alive, and they saw how Jesus was treated, even though he was the Son of God. You see, faith in Jesus gave them a whole new way to face life. They didn't blame God. They reached out to God. So what did Paul and Silas do in this midst of this place where they are backs against the wall, they are in prison, they have been beaten and bloody and chained and worn out and tired and disappointed and upset? I mean, what did they do? It tells us in Acts 16, verse 25, it says, around midnight, Paul and Silas began to sing and pray to God. The other prisoners were listening in. And suddenly there was a great earthquake which shook the very foundations of the prison. The prison doors opened and everyone's chains fell off. Instead of complaining about how unfair and unjust this all was, they actually prayed. They actually sang. Instead of saying how they were actually Romans and that they had rights, they were praying and singing. But they were doing it from a jail. They were in prison. They were bruised and bloody and broken. And in that place, they pour out their hearts to God. They sing their songs. You know, we don't really think of singing songs unless it's some sort of big victory. You know, you're at the big sports event and your team wins, and of course, rapturous applause and rapturous songs. You don't really think of singing when you're in this sort of place. But in that place of darkness and chains and fear and hurt, in that place, a prayer rose out of their lips and a song rose out of their hearts. And they did it when everything was unexpected, unwanted, unjust, and unfair. The story carries on. It says in verse 27, the jailer wakes up because of the noise, and he saw that the prison doors had been broken open. So he pulls out his sword, and he's going to kill himself because he assumed that the prisoners had all escaped. See, the jailer thought his life was over. The prisoners had escaped on his watch. He had done all the right things, and he had locked the chains, and he had locked the doors. He checked everything twice. It wasn't his fault, but he knew it would be perceived as his fault. It was unfair, but that was just how it was. He knew he would not be able to provide for his family, and rather than his children grow up with the shame of what had happened, he felt like the only option was to end it all. So what happens next? Paul cries out. He says, "Stop! Stop, mate!" And you can read about it in verse 28 to 31. He says, "Stop! We're all here. Turn the lights on." So they turn the lights on, and the jailer sees that all the prisoners are still there. And he falls before them on his knees and he's like, I can't believe what's going on. And then the jailer says to them, what must I do to be saved? He wants in on what's going on. They say to him, believe in Jesus and you will be saved, you and your entire household. Now, in those days, the jailer was attached, his house was attached to the jail. They lived in a section together. You can still see jails that are like this in the ancient world, and they still have some in Philippi as well. There's the jail connected to a household. And so it's understood that when all of this commotion's going on, it probably meant that his wife had come to see what all the noise was. His children were there. The people that lived in his house, everyone's there trying to figure out what's going on. And Paul says, you don't have to end it like this. There's salvation for you, but not just for you, your whole household. The jailer felt totally hopeless. You know, it's tough if you see no way out. I don't know if you've ever felt that way. It's hard feeling hopeless. And when you feel that way, you need somebody to shout out, to call your name in the darkness and turn the light on. You need somebody just to say, hey, we're here. We're here for you. We've not gone away. It's okay. You just didn't see us right now. Somebody hit the lights. Someone turn the lights on. It's okay. We're here. We're here. And if you're ever in that place where you feel hopeless, I hope that you can hear our voices crying out to you and saying, we're here. We're here. It might not look like it. It's dark. You don't see what's going on, but we're here. That's what we're called to be as followers of Jesus for one another. Light in dark places. Light for the world. We need to be the voices crying out. And I hope that if you're in that place, maybe today lights will begin to dawn for you and you may be able to see things a bit differently today. Story carries on. In verse 32 it says, that same hour, Paul and Silas told everybody the good news of Jesus. The jailer took them into his house and he washed their wounds. And then the jailer and his whole family got baptized before they sat down and shared a meal together. The next day, when the authorities find out that Paul and Silas were actually Roman citizens, they have to apologize to them and they escort them out of the city. You know, it's hard when life hits you with something big. We had a flat tire last week, and you know what? It was so annoying. It was just it was just annoying. I don't want to get into it, but it just was annoying. It was an interruption. It was just such a faff. But, you know, we got over it. And I've just lost my place. Give me a moment. But anyway, it was, in the grand scheme of things, it was just a little thing. It just was a tire, and we could get over it. But sometimes you get hit by life, and it's not a little thing. It's actually a ton of bricks. It's a flippin' juggernaut that runs you over. And I would hate for you to be hearing this morning or watching this morning and to think that I'm trying to peddle some kind of faith that just says, oh, just pray and sing a song and everything will work out. I want to tell you now, don't believe people who tell you that sort of junk. That's not what following Jesus is about. I want to tell you another story. Let me tell you about my brother. My brother's name was Tyler, and he was technically he was my stepbrother. But he joined our family when he was just a young lad, 9, almost 10. And when he got to the age of 13, maybe 14, he started having these strange sort of sensations. He started having this strange tingling sensation in his face. And he didn't really think anything of it, but it didn't go away. And then he had these moments where his tongue would actually just go numb. And it just kind of was weird, and he didn't know what was going on. Anyway, they took him to the doctors, and the doctor said, oh, we need to get it looked into further. So then they decided to do some scans, and then it starts to feel a bit more serious and worrying. And so he had some tests done, and we had to wait for some results. I don't know if you've ever had to wait for results, and you try as much as you can to not let your mind or your heart go to those places where you think the worst stuff, but then you're not sure what to think. You don't know what to do because you don't have an answer yet, and you're just stuck in this like in-between place. And so we were there in that in-between place, hoping for hope things would be good news, but not knowing because we didn't have an answer yet. And the results did come in, and the results were not good news. And it was a brain tumor. And it was not a very nice kind of brain tumor. Not that any of them are nice, but this was a serious sort of tumor. The kind that you wouldn't want anyone to ever get, whether they're blood related to you or not. And sadly, this tumor got the better of him. And he had a life ahead of him. He was only a teenager. So much possibility. So many adventures yet to experience. Relationships, fall in love, get married, have kids, get a job, get a driver's license, get a car, go to university. There was so much future. So much ahead. So much on the horizon. So much possibility. And life threw something so unexpected and unwanted and unjust and unfair. And it becomes even more personal to me because now that I'm an adult, not only an adult, I'm a parent. I have children the same age that my brother was when he first started experiencing symptoms. And I look at my own children and I think, I have so much hope for your life. I have so much hope for the future, so many good things that I want you to experience. And it makes it all the more heavy and all the more serious when I realize the sort of pain and grief that my dad and my stepmother must have gone through. Because as a parent, you want the best for your child. Don't you? Don't we all? We want the best for our children. And we want to do whatever we can to try to make life work out for them. We want the best for them. And I remember at the funeral, and in the U.S., it's common to have an open casket funeral. And I remember the casket at the front, and it was open, and Tyler was lying there. And as part of the service, my parents had picked a song to use, or for part of the service, and I'll never forget. And my dad walked forward, and he stood there, and he had his hands in the air and his eyes closed, and with tears streaming down his face, this crazy cry came out of his heart, which was, "How great is our God." You might know the song. It's the Chris Tomlin song, "How great is our God." Sing with me, "How great is our God." And all will see and all will know how great is our God. Funny thing is, you probably normally would think about singing that song if you win the lottery. You probably think about singing that song if you get a brand new car. You probably think about singing that song if you get that job that you always dreamed of, that promotion that you always wanted. You think of singing that song when things just work out for you. You don't sing the song when your back is up against the wall and you are bloody and beaten and bruised and disappointment is just right there in front of you and life has hit you and everything is unfair. Yet is not when you think to sing that song, "How great is our God. How great is our God." Sing with me. How great is our God. That's not the moment you think to sing these kind of things. You see, following Jesus doesn't make your life perfect. Following Jesus gives you a whole new perspective on life. You know, singing that song didn't bring my brother back. Singing that song turned our hearts towards God. Singing that song didn't change how unexpected and how unwanted and how unjust and how unfair the whole situation was. Singing that song turned our hearts towards God. Singing that song was a cry from a dark and bloody prison cell. Singing that song was a defiant anthem of rebellion. And when we face trials, which we will, there are people watching us. They're leaning in. They want to see what we will do and how we will react. I love in that story of Paul and Silas, it says how the other prisoners were listening in that night. It's interesting how their freedom could be affected by Paul and Silas's choices. It's interesting that the freedom for that jailer and his family was ultimately affected by the choices that Paul and Silas made. And maybe today you're listening in. Maybe today you're like one of those curious prisoners leaning in. Maybe you're like that jailer and you're in a place where you feel it's hopeless and yet you're leaning in. Maybe you're leaning in and you're hearing the story, or maybe you're hearing my dad's song. Maybe you feel like life has treated you in a way that is unexpected, unwanted, unjust, and unfair. And in all honesty, you have had enough. You don't feel like you can take anymore. And maybe you're not sure how to break the heaviness of it all. It's almost like you're in chains. If you feel that way, if you need someone to shout out that we're here for you, maybe you need someone to turn the lights on for you. That's what we want to do for you today. We want to shout out for you, on your behalf, to sing for you, on your behalf, to turn the lights on, and maybe help you see things just a little bit differently and know that you are not alone. Now, if you're watching this morning and you're watching live, if you're in that place where you feel like you would need some support, maybe some prayer, someone to reach out to you, please take a risky, bold moment and put something in the chat. Just put in the chat and say, will you pray for me? And we'll get in touch. Someone will contact you and pray with you. And if you're part of New Life Church already, contact people in your small group. Contact those in your fused group. We believe life is better connected. We grow when we are connected and stay together in relationship. I'm sure Paul was pretty grateful that Silas was there with him. And I'm sure Silas was pretty grateful that Paul was experiencing that with him. We don't have to go through this stuff on our own. We can do it together. And maybe you're watching this and you're not even yet a follower of Jesus, but you're sitting here thinking, yeah, I would love to have that ability to face these things that happen in life, whether they're unwanted and unexpected and unjust and unfair. I'd love to have that resolve in my life where I can feel able to just open my heart to God and pray, and that a song could come out of my heart, that I could open my life. I feel like that would be something I would want to be able to do. I'd want a relationship like that. And if that's what you'd like, if that's the sort of thing that you would like to experience and discover for yourself, please get in touch. Contact us at hello@nlcletchworth.org so we can begin to journey and share and walk together. And after Easter, we're also going to be running an Alpha course. And Alpha is a perfect place for you just to ask questions, to bring your wonderings and your wanderings and just bring your heartache, bring everything that you've got, bring your big, crazy questions, bring your doubts, bring your fears, bring your angers, bring everything. And just begin to discuss in a safe place. And we'd love to share with you and just open it up and talk about what it means to follow Jesus. And you can find all the details about that on our website. But wherever you are on your faith journey, we would love to journey with you. Whatever your history, your hang-ups, or your heartaches, you are welcome here. We're going to close now with a song, and it's called Surrounded. And it has the words in this song, and it says, "It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you." And as we sing this song, maybe in your room today, this could be your cry from your prison cell. Or maybe this could be your declaration that you sing because you know there are other people in your life who are looking in on your life. And maybe this could be your song of praise to God. But let's take a moment now and let's worship together with this song.
There's a table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. It's your body and blood to shed for me. This is how I fight my battles. In the valley, I know that you're with me. Surely goodness and mercy follow me. My weapons are praise and thanksgiving. This is how I fight my battles. This is how. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how. And I believe you'll overcome. And I will lift my song of praise for what you've done. And I believe you'll overcome. And I will lift my song of praise for what you've done. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how we fight our battles. 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 This is how.
It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. If you allow me, we could just pray together for a moment to get ready to close our morning. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much God, for who you are. I thank you that you are a good God. I thank you that you are with us through every season of life. Father, I pray for anyone who's watching this morning that you would be with them, that you would strengthen them, whether they feel like stuck in a prison or they feel like it's hopeless. I ask that you would be with them. You would strengthen them. God, I ask that you would help them know that they are not alone. And Father, for those of us who are followers of Jesus, help us not to get confused and think that when things go wrong that somehow you're no longer good or no longer loving. God, help us to realize that even your Son, who was the best person that ever lived, was treated in the worst possible way. And thank you for what Jesus has gone through on our behalf. We thank you that following you gives us a whole new perspective on life. God, I pray for anyone today who's just discovering and learning and wanting to find out more about you. I ask that you just continue to be a light for their steps, and their next steps become clear as they continue to discover more about who you are. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for joining us today. If anything we've talked about has raised anything in you, in your heart, in your life, just please get in touch. We would love to journey with you. We are entering the Easter season, and next Sunday is Palm Sunday, and then we move into the Easter season. And this is a moment where we look at the situation that happened to Jesus' life. And if you want to find out more about how we can have this type of hope, I really encourage you to lean in and find out more over this Easter season. So have a great rest of the week. Whatever you've got going on, enjoy the sunny day. And we'll see you next Sunday at 10:20 a.m. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.